In this tutorial, you'll learn how to create your own tutorial for your students. Before we start creating our own tutorial, we need to better understand the principles of cognitive theory and multimodal learning, which we'll use to structure the design of our tutorial. Next, I'll talk about the tools and resources that you need to get started. Toward the end of this tutorial, I'll list the questions you need to consider while planning, drafting, and producing your tutorial. Let's first take a look at the key principles of the cognitive theory of multimodal learning. Richard Mayer talks about dual channel processing, which is based on the assumption that learners can learn from visual input and audio input. For able-bodied learners, we learn best from words and audio coordinated together rather than words and audio alone. Let's look at an example with only words and graphics. Imagine this lesson for a class of English language learners. And now the same example with only audio.
These are the parts of my body from my head to my toes.
And now let's look at the final example that combines audio and visual text.
These are the parts of my body from my head to my toes. I'm gonna move each body part and say it. Here we go.
How can we apply Mayer's theory to optimize student learning? As educators, we can access student prior knowledge with pre-training activities. First thing we can do to help our student is provide an outline or overview of the tutorial, which provides a mental map for students to follow. Next, consider reviewing key vocabulary words or concepts that you plan to discuss in your tutorial. Could they read a text first, perhaps? Or maybe complete a journal entry or complete a pre-video quiz so you can access student prior knowledge prior to the video tutorial. Or maybe students would benefit from participating in a class discussion prior to the tutorial lesson. Mayer argued that because our visual and auditory channels in our brain are limited, we need to reduce extraneous material, highlight or cue relevant material, and coordinate the narration with our visuals. If we're going to optimize students' learning potential, we need to make sure we coordinate our narration with the graphics and text. Let's look at a classic example.
Every country on earth at the moment is reforming public education. There are two reasons for it.
What we want to avoid is to narrate while we expect students to read vital information on the screen. So as you can see right now, playing on the video, there are a few paragraphs, and as you're trying to listen to what I'm saying and trying to read the content, because later perhaps you're going to be quizzed on it, this is a bit more challenging because you're trying to pay attention to two things at the same time. So this is what you want to avoid. So this is not synchronized narration with graphics and text. This is probably one of the most important principles that you'll learn from this video, because when students feel overwhelmed by the content, their ability to process information is limited. Remember, adults can only process 5 to 7 chunks of information at one time in the working memory, and it's much less for younger children. Help your students by synchronizing the narration with the visual content, and pace the tutorial based on the age of the learner and the difficulty level of the content. Because it's a video, you can always ask students to pause it for a second and ask them to post to a Q&A discussion board or discussion forum. You can model this for them by visiting the class site during your recording of the tutorial. Let's review. Remember, we learn more from visual text and audio text than only visual and audio alone. Avoid cognitive overload by reducing extraneous material. Provide an outline and pre-training activities to optimize student learning and engagement. Let's move on to our next objective. How can we structure our tutorial? What I'm doing in this tutorial is simply using Google Slides. If you've created a presentation before, you can create your own tutorial. Let me step out for a quick second so you can take a look. I'm currently using Camtasia. In the top menu bar, I have the recorder playing, and I can simply hit the present button to actually just present my PowerPoint presentation, or in this case, Google Slides. Later, I could always choose to edit those parts out or not. It just depends on how formal or informal your tutorial will be. This begs the question, should I have a script or not? Well, that's entirely up to you. The more pauses and hedges in your narration, the more likely you'll lose your students' attention. I'm currently using a script for this tutorial because I plan to upload it to my YouTube channel and share it with other teachers. If I plan to reuse a video and include it in my fixed curriculum, then I opt for the script. If I want to develop a tutorial to address an issue that the specific classroom of students is struggling with, and I need to create a video right away, then I don't bother with a script. As I mentioned before, start with an outline or overview slide and use different slides to signal to the audience that you're shifting to a new item on your outline. In this particular tutorial, all of my blue slides coordinate with each item on my overview slide. Also, as I've done with this very tutorial, I cue with my narration that I'm moving on to the next main idea. Moreover, I use review slides to access your prior knowledge. Once you've created your slides on PowerPoint or Google Slides and you're ready to record, you'll want to decide whether or not to turn on the front-facing camera. Research shows that teacher presence builds social presence in the classroom, which allows students to feel better connected to the teacher. The audio alone is effective, but if possible, use the front-facing camera as well. Before I talk about the tools you need to build your tutorial, you may want to first see if another educator already created such a video. You can either use that instead or perhaps embed a clip of that work into your presentation to share with students, similar to what I did when I illustrated the parts of the body song. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. However, be mindful of copyright restrictions if you plan to use YouTube to distribute your tutorial. Let's review. Remember, keep it simple by creating a standard PowerPoint presentation. Start with an outline or overview slide. Decide whether or not you're going to use a script. Search for tutorials that already exist, and don't forget to include review slides. Now it's time to decide on the screen capture tool you'll use to produce your video tutorial and how you plan to share it. Here's a list of the most popular screen capture tools. The top 3 are free as well as QuickTime. Let me take 1 minute to show you how QuickTime works, which is very similar to other software. Because I'm using Camtasia to record this very video, I can't show you how to use Camtasia because I'm in the middle of using it. However, let me show you QuickTime. To access QuickTime, click on the Finder window, go to Applications, select QuickTime Player. QuickTime will prompt you to open a video, so I'm going to click Cancel. Find the top menu bar for QuickTime Player, select File, and then Record Screen. Select the area that you wish to record, and then click Record. Once I'm done with my recording, I simply click on the recorder button. It automatically stops the recording and saves a copy onto my desktop. For my tutorial, I will want to trim the beginning and end of the tutorial where I look for the recorder and stop the recorder. To trim this part, I need to go to Edit, then Cut. Here I can move the slider to where I want the presentation to start, and I can trim the end and then cut. Save the file, and then later you'll want to upload it to the cloud. If the file is small enough, you can email it to students. Let's consider some hardware and software issues as you develop your tutorial. First, you want to do a test run to see if the audio works and if the video works. Test your microphone. Determine if you have enough memory and hard drive space. Decide whether you plan to use something simple like Google Slides or something more sophisticated like Prezi. Decide which editing software you would like to use. At the most basic level, you can use QuickTime Player simply to trim the beginning and end. Consider the upload and email speed, and so do a trial run to see if it is possible to email these files. Also consider Creative Commons for music, photos, and video clips, and consider copyright restrictions when uploading video tutorials. Let's take a look at some questions that we need to consider. How will you make students accountable for actually watching the videos? Perhaps you would like for them to tweet or text or email. Consider an online survey or quiz. They can post to a discussion board about the tutorial. They can actually fill out a feedback form to give you feedback on how to improve your tutorials. Depending on the actual tutorial, you might do something fun and leave Easter eggs. So these are little images or words that they have to sort of look for as they watch the video. And last, consider using the statistical analysis tool in your course management system, which can determine which students have watched your tutorial. Also, how will you make the tutorials accessible to students? To do so, you'll want to keep videos short to minimize file size. If given the option, select the lower quality option within the video software tools that you're using. Students often have bandwidth problems, so trying to process a large file will be problematic for many students. So do not create high-def videos. And then again, select the low-quality option. And consider platforms like YouTube, which can render a video that is more accessible to students. And last, consider things like font size, so that way the text is readable. Also for English language learners, consider captions, or for those with learning disabilities. And then last, if captions are too difficult to add to your video, consider using a script and simply giving a copy of the script to students so they have access to the content. All right, so this is your homework. Select a teachable concept or topic. How to get creative with your introductions, how to use dialogue in a story, how to tell the difference between a comma splice and run-on. Next, select a platform. Decide on Google Slides, Prezi, PowerPoint, you choose. Within that platform, simply create an effective presentation. Consider concise and clear text, minimal words per slide, relevant graphics and video clips. Consider writing a script. Select a screen capture recorder, something like Loom, Screencastify, Camtasia, QuickTime. Once you've created your presentation, turn on the recorder, start the presentation, and narrate or read your script. Once done, trim the beginning and end, save the file, and then upload it to the cloud.